Welcome to another episode of The Mind's Eye with Mike Lowry. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I got another good one for you today. Today, I wanted to talk about supporting the black community. We got another generation that's coming up behind us. What are we doing to support them? What are we doing to make sure they're on the right track? There are a lot of underserved communities in this area, and so I just wanted to have a conversation with a few people to kind of see what we could do to change the narrative. Stay tuned.
A lot of it, I think, sometimes is accountability, discipline.
Yeah.
I've been to many different minority establishments, and I can see the difference
Right.
in a lot of different ways that they approach things. And sometimes it has you saying, like, this is why I don't come here, or this is why I won't support this. Another thing too that I've also noticed, and in my own experience, is also people watch everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you in your personal life got a mess, it's going to reflect in your business.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know I'm surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs trying to do things, right? They're trying to get out there, they're trying to be successful, and they're trying to make it happen. And I think that's great, but at the same time, your personal life doesn't reflect your movement. And that's something that I recently had to reflect in myself with my own businesses.
Yeah.
I don't want to promote this, and then when people see me in my personal life, it's showing something different. I feel like it really all should tie in together. And so I've heard people say, like, I'm not going to go to this event, or I'm not going to support this person because they got X, Y, and Z going on in their life, and their life is a mess, and they got all this drama and da 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 da. It's true. And then, like, I feel like what they're trying to do is phony.
But like for us though, I feel like for us though, even like other people that everybody got like mess. Like everybody deals with drama situations. Like you show a facade on a camera and you have a whole life that people around you can see, but they still find a way to support each other. Like, every other race really, but the black race, like we really struggle with that as a whole. So I'm really like trying to like identify what that is for a lot of people and how we can really support people that look like us more and not be in competition, not, always trying to compete with your brother, the people you call your friend. Like a lot of times, like people have the resources they need to elevate and then they'll hold them to themselves and not give them back and not, push the next generation forward. But Belana, I feel like you want to say something.
Hi, how are you? I think there are two ways to think about it, and the way that you guys are describing it, from my experience, is more on the individual level. But there is a much broader societal, systemic things that are happening or that have happened that have embedded those type of behaviors in our community. Doesn't mean that we're not resilient and we can't break through it. It's almost like, what is the prescription for us to overcome those things? So everything you said is correct. And I think it's on a spectrum, because there are some black businesses, there are black VCs and people that are thriving and their business is flourishing and perfect. But looking at it from a grand level of the majority of our community, what is causing us not to advance as rapidly as our counterparts?
Right.
And one thing, and this is just my experience, is thinking about, in order to have a successful business, you have to have diversity in your network. And when I say diversity, I'm talking about diversity of skills. So when you don't have that, you're kind of like trying to figure things out and run a business, and it just kind of brings down the morale. If your morale is down, going back to what, I don't know your name. What's your name? Going back to what you said earlier, was about, bringing the personal stuff in and really keeping it away from the business thing, but your personal life should be reflecting the progress that you have in your business.
Right.
So it's a lot. This conversation can keep going on for like 2 days.
For sure. Yeah. It's crazy because you talked about like businesses. So like when you break down the statistics, like you know, Caucasians, they own 85% of businesses. What I mean by businesses, like in this spectrum, is like more of like firms, like bigger business, 250 people or more,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then you got like Asians, they have 11%. Hispanics even have 7%. And black people is 2.8%, less than 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells me like, but then when you break down the statistics the most, and you break down like every other statistical race in terms of what people bring into their household, the black community actually has the less amount of money coming into their household. However, we spend 30% more in fashion, clothes, Jordans than any other race. Why do
Why
y'all
you
think that is? You said what?
I said you said Jordans, not shoes. So
That's the one that people can relate to the most. The Jones.
It's interesting. And I have a question for you guys because I really want to understand the context. Because you mentioned you have many businesses. I would love to understand the industry that you work in. Trish.
Specifically me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I work in corporate America along
Okay.
with Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a life coach and I have a podcast.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
and Mike, you work in financial services, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do life coaching, I do speaking engagements, and I have a YouTube channel as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Mike, we really have to break it down.
Mm-hmm.
So there are statistics, there are numbers, but
Yeah.
also we have to look at the Black community. How many people are comprised of the Black community in the United States? One.
Right.
How many people in the Black community sits on boards of Fortune 500 companies? Number
Yeah.
two. And
Mm-hmm.
those things create capital, systemic capital.
Right.
So if you don't have an entry point into sitting on a board or being a part of the VC
Mm-hmm.
or to create wealth for yourself, it's hard to bring other people in so they can start create their small businesses and create wealth too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
But
numbers thing and there's an entry point issue.
yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
to me, like that's more of like in a broader, bigger scale. But I'm just talking about like a much smaller scale to the people that you know, people you associate yourself with, people that you see every day in terms of like our community when it comes to us helping each other. It has been difficult. And I've seen other situations, my own situation, and things like we really struggle with the support of each other. Like it's crazy because like I was thinking about like the whole situation with the whole J. Cole thing. You know, he apologized about the whole rap thing with Kendrick Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
And all people that look like us clown J. Cole for apologizing. But see, what I've learned is that this society, for our community, we live off entertainment, regardless of who it demises, regardless of who it hurts or what have you. And so I just want to like generate more conversation so we can stop doing that to each other. Like, you know, create a new wave, a new narrative at this level. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily like at a Fortune 500, because that's a whole nother, you know, realm of things. Amongst us, we can find one or two people that may find themselves over there. But if we can change stuff around in this little area, which is the majority, then we can make real change. That's where my focus is. You know.
What like that you do help, you know, other people or to help yourself thrive that you think more people should take on and embody?
So like just like, you know, just really like anything. When it comes to like, we would rather bash each other than to stand beside each other. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if like you struggle with something, it becomes like a tear down or a joke or what have you. If one of your friends tell you right now you got a business, more than likely, most of us will try to figure out all the ways why it wouldn't work for each other than why it would. You know what I'm saying? That's just how it's been. That's what I've seen. You know, social media tells the story the best. I mean, and then personal situations that I've learned and heard from other people, it's been something that's been a trying thing for us. And the statistics show, like, you know, when it comes to the small businesses, the bigger businesses, we typically don't have the togetherness to be able to make things work, for each other. And I just want to like bring awareness to that, and hopefully at some point we can start turning a new leaf, and I think that in order to do that, we got to have these type of conversations at this level. You know what I'm saying? So when one of us make it out of this level, we can have these other conversations at the bigger level. You know what I'm saying? Because that's where it starts. It starts here. But I don't think we're having these conversations enough because we're always in competition. We're always trying to impress people with fashion and different things like that versus like, okay, brother, like how can I really support you and help you with what you're trying to do? You know what I'm saying? We don't have those conversations enough at all. So I just wanted to know from y'all experiences, like Balan, I know you like on this corporate level here, but I also know you've had experiences on a more like smaller level too, where you've seen the same thing that I'm talking about. What have you?
I do want to speak on the part that you mentioned, Mike, about like tearing each other down. And I feel like a lot of that drives from insecurity, them feeling insecure within themselves. And so it's easier to kind of point the finger and be like, ha ha, you can't do this, or ha ha, you failed, or you can't do this right, or you're not good at that, or whatever. And about being in competition with each other. And I think one of the biggest things people fail to realize in life in general is that we don't understand the magnitude of how much we can change, we can do in this world if we come together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Someone said people like to see you doing good, just not better than them.
That is
the insecurity
that's the truth.
factor.
Like they want you to be like your well-being to be okay. They want to be enough to pay your bills, but when it comes to like being to another level or a different tier outside of where they are, then it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem. But the question is why is that though? Like why do we have a hard time with that with each other more than anybody else? When it comes to like other races and you see them, they'll grab somebody and bring them up with them. Grab somebody, bring them up with them. Grab somebody, bring them up with them. But in our community, we don't really do that like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you got to almost sell yourself to really like get involved with certain people to elevate, because like it's almost like we look at situations where we want to be on the top by ourselves with the other races instead of like, creating that lifestyle for each other. So below like I was asking before, like at this little small level, the regular people, not like, this high end corporate level, I know you've had an experience or situations that you can kind of speak to like as to why you think that might be the case.
Not to go big.
Okay. Yeah, not to go big. I know it's hard for you.
Okay, let me just give more context then. I think it's important to talk about exactly what you're saying, but it's also important to acknowledge the history of our community versus our counterparts, because that is the reason why. So I can talk about, other people don't want to lift other people up with them, but why is that? It's somebody, you mentioned fear, insecurities, but that comes from what are you seeing in your community? If you have been historically the only one rising and then someone else is rising up, you're like, oh, this is my competition versus this is my peer. But let's say somebody in a different community, that's all they see is everybody's thriving. Oh, I work at the Federal Reserve. Oh, I'm doing this or whatever. Then it's normal that these are my peers. These people can give me information. These people can help me. They're not competing with me. They're part of my network. So now on a smaller level, we have to, Mike, you have a podcast. Trish, you have a podcast. If I have a podcast, instead of me saying, oh, okay, these people are my competitors. No, you guys can be my peers. We can work together. What's your podcast that can make me better? How can I some of your market share in your audience? What, how did you refine your approach to get to where you are? Just reorienting how you're feeling about people that are advancing at the same level as you is
It's
And
important.
also, like the analogy I used to like to use when you had people that were maybe in the same industry as you,
Hmm.
right? And people getting discouraged about that because then they start feeling that like, oh, well, I'm competition or I got to be better or I got to do this and that. And I always love to use the analogy of being in the grocery store and you're in the bread aisle.
Hmm.
You go in the bread aisle and you are going to see, I don't know, 20 different brands of bread. You know what I mean? But the
Yeah.
reality is you can't focus so much on just how saturated something is and just realize that it could be in the same industry, but nobody's going to bring what you bring. You are uniquely you. And like you
Hmm.
said, in expanding your network, asking those questions, building
Yeah.
those relationships, and like you said, I saw a quote earlier today that it said, I wouldn't feel offended if I see somebody doing better than me. If anything, I want to get closer to them and ask them those questions, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. Hey, how did you refine your craft? What are some
Hmm.
tips you can give me? You're on this level. I aspire to be there at some point, in my business. Share some of that knowledge with me because obviously you created a formula that worked for you.
Right. Somebody said we have been conditioned to think and operate from position of less than and lack. This is
Yeah.
ingrained through generations of trauma and slavery.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree with that
true. Yeah.
100%. But see, like now though, it's like, what do we do different now? Like, we know what transpired. We know all the things that has happened. But now here we are in 2024. What
Mm-hmm.
can we do different to start the change, to start to move the change?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think. Oh,
no, go ahead.
oh, okay.
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I look at everything obviously from a very psychological standpoint of view, just given what I do and my natural nature.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's where it is important to really reach out in our communities.
Mhm.
Um, the youth, getting them involved in mentorship programs and really speaking life into our youth.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, certain people of age is hard to, not saying they can't grow because they absolutely can, but they have to have that willingness and that curiosity to really want to grow and expand their mind outside of what society has always told us that we are.
Yeah.
Like for me, having a Hispanic background, if I were to stick with what society tells me that I'm supposed to be doing, I'm either supposed to be a stay-at-home mom raising 10 kids,
Dang.
or I'm going to be working in construction my whole life because that's all what we're known for.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's not, and I really think it starts with self.
Mhm.
Your
For
mental, your
sure.
spiritual, your emotional healing. And I feel like as a culture, there's a lot of healing that needs to be done.
Mhm.
But again, we have to really reach out to our peers and this younger
Mhm.
generation. Let's start that healing so we can change that mindset because you're absolutely right. It does stem back from when all that was happening in slavery. Absolutely,
Yeah.
1,000%.
Mhm. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Bo?
So that comment that someone made about operating from a position of less than and lack really sparked something.
Mhm.
If you think about, and Mike, maybe we've had this conversation before
Mhm.
about sometimes people in our community think that they don't deserve the things they get. So if you
Mhm.
promotion or if you get a good job, it's like that you have this attitude of I'm grateful and I've made it. Not that I've put in the work and I
Right.
deserve it. So
Right.
going back to this context of, let's say you've started a thriving business, and then people that maybe your customers or people that you are, thinking should be your customer base is like, how dare
Mhm.
you? And they
Right.
so that's a part of it, because sometimes I don't know, in the coaching world, when you have certain clients and you're trying to tell them the way to go, I don't know how
Mhm.
receptive they are to certain things of being bold and reaching beyond what status quo is set for them in society.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. To Trisha's point, like I think like getting out there in the community, supporting, the youth. Like I'm actually working on something now with the youth, and I think that community is good, whether it's a church, whether, whatever it is that like, you can position yourself to like, help and support the next generation. I think it's important because like we can have all these conversations, you know, in the world, but like if we're not really like doing nothing but talking, you know, it's not really gonna really make real change. Because like I remember when I went to Elevation Church and I used to serve at the Boys and Girls Club, and I remember like how the kids were like how they looked up to me and like how they looked at me as like somebody that you know they never experienced, or what have you. And it's like to think that like people don't really go there like that. Like, you know, they don't really like, you know, support. It's an underserved community. And I know that a lot of people will get on podcasts and they'll talk their talk, but there's nobody out there on the ground. There's nobody out there like getting into these organizations and like really talking to these kids or even like, you know, networking and going to the high schools and talking to these, you know, young black kids that, you know, their only option is to go to the NFL or the NBA or whatever the case may be or whatever. But like, what if that don't work out? Like, you know, what's next? And then when those things don't work out, because our community has also created the only way to be successful is to be like an athlete, an entertainer, or of some sort. And so we got to change the narrative to be able to like put, you know, your feet in the water, if you
Mhm.
will, and do some legwork, you know, out here in this community because it's up to us, you know, to help change the narrative of what we're going through. We just can't just keep talking about it and sitting back and watching. And so
No, absolutely.
somebody says each of us have a responsibility, bring up our family, friends, and others, but the lift is heavy and
Yeah.
real. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it is.
It's,
So look, my question is, what do you guys commit to doing to trying to help the next generation of this community that appears to be suffering the most, that has also been through the most, and also has been oppressed the most. But how can we change that narrative now, you know, and do something different?
So there are a few things that I do right now. So I'm a mentor.
Okay.
But I think it's also important to think of how can you sponsor young men and women that look like you too. So
Mm-hmm.
not just how can you get them in front of business leaders for opportunities and really put your name behind them and help coach them get to that point. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
I think you can't do everything, but you can plant seeds into
Yeah, I
individuals and
think that's
flourish.
important.
Mhm.
What about you, Trish?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned. So I've actually been trying to get into mentorship program for like the longest time. I've had the hardest time doing it because I truly have a soft spot for young teenagers and young adults. Um, and but I will say I do have some very special encounters with people. That's just the way God designed my life. I run into people all the time and just speaking life into them. Also doing the work within myself, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as somebody a part of the minority community. Make sure, you know, I'm holding my own accountability and I'm healing. And that way I can pour that life into this younger generation,
Mm-hmm.
and being in front of them and helping them out. And if I see somebody in that space, you know, I have no problem being like, hey, this is, you know, this is what's worked for me. This is what I've done. I've even had those talks with Mike,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because we're kind of in that same space, you
Yeah.
know, and showing him like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I worked on. These are maybe softwares that I've used, and this is how you can use it to your advantage and things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah. What's so crazy is that like even on the smallest level, like I've learned that like there are people that will they'll support you and they'll support you along the way. But then there are so many people that claim to be like your friend. Like and you realize you put yourself in situations where you've, you know, given yourself and in their situation they might be dealing with or going through, but as soon as you ask for a suggestion, they like say, well, you got to do this for me. I'm just like, that's crazy because we the only people that do that. You know, like it just blows my mind. It's always like, well, let me support my brother, but I expect something in return. You
We're not
know,
the only I gotta say this. We're not the only people that do that, Mike.
well, look, I'm gonna say that, but we aren't though. But as a whole, though, when it comes to a whole, why are we still like we can look at the statistics based on slavery, based on things that has transpired back in the day. But if you look at how things are now, we have access to a lot of things. But when it comes to the togetherness of each other, it's not the same. obviously all races do everything, good, bad, evil, or whatever. But when it comes to us, we do fall along the lines of the not supporting. Like nobody's really going back in their community and really, helping. Like maybe a rapper might come back in their community or do something like that. But does somebody that's like a VP of some company that's black go back in their community and do certain things?
They
So
do.
so let's talk about it then.
Let's.
Why don't we don't know about it? See, like you're on a different level of how you perceive and see stuff. But this level that's down here, like kids at the Boys and Girls Club, I've been associating myself with them for a while. I've never seen no VP or an executive, anybody like that come over there and talk to those kids. So that's what I'm talking about.
It happens a lot, very often, Mike, and sometimes we don't see it. I know a few people that work in the banking community that are C-suite, VPs, whatever, and they are actively looking for someone to mentor. The difference, though, is that in our community, if young people are not hungry, black executives and C-suite executives are not going to put their names behind them.
But what they're saying is like majority of black people ain't hungry then, like in this area.
Of ripeness. And it's sometimes, and this is where the flaw is, they're looking for someone that they can see themselves in that person, because they're not going to put their name behind somebody that
I can understand that.
You see what I'm trying to say? But I see it quite often where there are VPs and executives mentoring and pulling up people in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm thinking more like so. Again, on a smaller scale of people, like we don't have like maybe not necessarily a VP, but maybe like somebody that's ahead of something small, not coming back to the community. Because like I can understand like a VP may be going to help black people that may have a master's, but are we really like doing the work for somebody that don't? You know what I'm saying? How can we get that? Because majority of the people in that area don't have those same resources. Look, so I'm not saying like, for an example, like I'm a huge advocate of like somebody used to tell me that some of the things that happened in our community when it came to like one of the unarmed black kids getting killed in Philly by a cop, blah blah blah. And somebody was like, well, why isn't Will Smith saying anything? Why isn't Kevin Hart saying anything? I was like, we don't know. They could be saying stuff. We just don't know. They could be doing things behind the scenes. Just because they don't post it out there loud and clear, that doesn't mean that they're not doing it, to your point. You know what I mean? So, but if you look at like social media is like the biggest thing that we have as a totality in awareness and knowing kind of an idea or a small sample size of kind of what goes on outside of our own environment. And if you look at that environment on social media, there's plenty of platforms that where we tear each other down. And then when somebody actually is respectful or respectable in spaces, they still get torn down and they say, oh, they soft. They must be a bitch. They must be this and this and that because they were being vulnerable and they were telling the truth. But you don't see that much anywhere else in any other areas. Like, for an example, like the point I was making about J. Cole. J. Cole was apologizing. He was like, that's my boy. I never really I got caught up in this rap stuff. I just wanted to let y'all know that I apologize. And other black people was clowning him for apologizing. Like, in any other race, that's commendable. That's respectable. And that's what's being promoted in our society as to what we see every day. So then now we go on our day-to-day lives seeing that same behavior. You know what I'm saying? We go out over here and think that we're the only ones that can't take a chick to a Cheesecake Factory because that's society that's being created. So it's like, are we really trying to support each other and really have a good time with each other and pour into each other? Or is there a standard that's always got to be met that majority of the people in this space can't meet the standard? Because the statistics show the average black person in America make $48,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So obviously we ain't doing something right. At some point we got to take responsibility.
Somebody said J. Cole apologized because he didn't get the reaction he thought he was going to get.
Oh, here we go. See what I mean?
Person Mike talking about.
Here we go.
I do want to make a point though, Mike, to what you were saying about, people could be doing things behind the scenes and maybe we just, we don't see it, but it's also become a culture that when people are doing good things and they want to showcase it, people take it the wrong way, like, oh, you just bragging about that. Oh, you out here feeding the homeless. That's just off
Yeah,
for show. That's just off for publicity and whatever, whatever.
for sure.
And I think it all ties back into perspective too. Not saying that there haven't been celebrities that, yeah, just do things for clout,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
ultimately, I think we need to change our perspective. Like, if I see a celebrity, they out there feeding the homeless, good for them,
Yeah,
you
because that
know?
should bring like awareness to you. Like, okay, maybe I should do something in my community versus looking at
Exactly.
it like, oh, maybe they showing off. Because
Mm-hmm.
when if a homeless guy's on the corner and you decide to give him $1, it's not
Mm-hmm.
your decision as to what they do with it. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes your heart has to be fixed a certain way to be able to do certain things, and that's the lesson in that space. Not necessarily what they're gonna do with the dollar, but can your heart be fixed in a certain way or capacity to where you can give when you're compelled to or you feel the need to? You know what I'm saying? But I feel like most of us struggle with that. He telling me something. He knew Kendrick was coming with nobody knew Drake had a baby until Kendrick came through. Look, Young Dice, um, J. Cole apologizing because J. Cole is a down earth guy, man. He ain't about the drama, and he said he coming soft. He said he was coming. He wasn't coming hard. So yeah, that's exactly what he did. He said that in the song. But anyways, huh?
I say you love J. Cole, don't you?
Yeah, I'm a J. Cole fan. You know what I'm saying? What's wrong with that? Dang. I'm a J. Cole fan. I ain't go to Dreamville though. That's too many people for me. God dang. They said 100,000 people were here. Dude, I can't do it. But look, this dude about to get me off task, Young Dice. But nah. But yeah, so I mean, this whole conversation is really about just bringing awareness to our level. You know what I'm saying? What we can do in the community to give back and support each other, especially like if you know if somebody comes to you with an idea that that's on a different level, like a regular level. Can you converse with them and help them in the space that they're in, versus like being overly critical? Because that's so important when somebody's starting something. If somebody's overly critical, is it you putting your fear on me, or you really have a better idea or something that can work better? So, but yeah, that's something. You can't shoot a block up and then say sorry. Okay, man, God. Okay, man. Hey, but that thing was probably recorded like months ago, and then he came to his senses. He probably went through therapy and stuff like that. See, what's wrong with apologizing? Because you was bashing somebody you cared about. See what's wrong with our community? I don't understand it. I don't understand it. But yeah, so the question again, like, what do y'all commit to doing, like on a smaller level, in your own community in which you live in, as to how you can give back to your community and the generation with Black and brown people, and kind of help and support what they got going on and uplift somebody, even if it's just one. Where areas and places you can go to do that at? Because if we say we want to make change, we got to be the change. We can't just keep talking about it. And well, like at this level, way up here, these people are doing it, but nobody's doing it down here. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm working on doing it. That's my goal. I got some stuff in line right now, and I'll tell y'all about it in the future. Maybe y'all can help participate in this thing I got going with the youth in underserved communities.
Well, there you go. That's part of the commitment. So when you let me know what you got
See what I'm
going
talking
on,
about?
then I'll be there to support and help guide you. Whatever strengths I have that could help benefit and flourish the movement, then there you
But
go.
why you
That's
waiting
my
on
commitment.
me?
You got to tell me what you're doing.
I know that, but I'm saying, what I'm saying is that y'all can have something too. It could be
Oh no, yeah,
small.
for sure, for
Yeah,
sure. Well,
that's
like I
all I'm
said,
saying.
for me, it comes more so in the encounters that I have with people
Yeah,
and the way I speak to them. It happens every day at work for me, all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I'll never forget, at my old spot before, when I used to work with Mike. And when I was getting ready to leave, I think it had to be like my last day at this particular place that I was working at.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a client come in and they came in with their daughter, and he began to just kind of open up and tell me his life story and tell me, how unfortunately, the kid's mom, she up and left.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the streets and had problems with addiction and substance abuse and things like that. And his daughter, I think, she might have been like 18. And he was saying how she's really stepped up and helped, taking care of her younger brother. And in that moment, immediately, I just began to speak life into that young
Mm-hmm.
girl,
Yeah.
and at the end of it, I mean, she was in tears. She was giving me a hug, and I hope that something I said really impacted her, and
Mm-hmm.
uplifting her and encouraging her to pursue her dreams, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
Um, and also turning her towards, potentially finding a mentorship program,
Right.
somebody
Right.
that can, really be there for her and hold her accountable and,
Mm-hmm.
and guide her,
Yeah.
because not everybody has that.
That's true. Yeah, true. Yeah. So I just challenge y'all more than anything just to commit to something on our level. I have to keep saying that with belong on this on this level to like, do something in your own community.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I'm saying? As far as how you want to give back to your own community. Not necessarily like, I'm over here, I want to bring, this guy over here for an interview or whatever. Like what can you do to impact your own community in which you live in?
Let me ask um, Mike and Trish, do you have young people in your family that maybe you can mentor to as well, or you've tried to
Yeah.
mentor?
For
Yeah.
sure. That's a good point.
hmm
Yeah, that's a good point
hmm
because it starts within house. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this guy said the problem with some communities is they comfortable in their environment, such as receiving food stamps and low rent. So when I did a feed the hungry in the local projects, they don't like change and so much drama within. Yeah, I mean that
That's
is true. Like
true.
some of us don't make it easy to be helped. I
That's
will
true.
say that
That is
it
true.
can be a challenging time.
hmm
But I also to the point that I was thinking about earlier to his point, like I was thinking earlier, I was like, have we gotten comfortable with just being at the where we are?
hmm
Have we gotten comfortable with, you know, making the least, as a society, given
Yeah.
the time we've been here? Have we
hmm
gotten comfortable to his point with getting food stamps, with getting assistance, with getting, certain things? And a lot of that is systematic racism, and that a lot of black people just get sucked into because they ain't really got to do much to get a little bit. You know what I mean? And a lot of them are okay with a little bit. But if we can find like one and two here and there, you know what I'm saying? That's why I like the thing that I'm working on. I know out of those 50 kids, I'm not gonna probably help them all. But if I can find two or three of them, it's
hmm
worth it because then they can start, passing it
Yeah.
down. They can start, doing, the things necessary to kind of like, build on what they were
hmm
taught or what they would learn. I just hope they don't keep in that same space because it's tough. You go in there for one engagement, they going back into that environment. You go in there for another engagement, they going right back into that environment. But even in that, you'll still get you like one or two,
Yeah.
and that's all. That's a start. You know what I'm saying? And if you got one of the cool kids that's talking about like business, that's talking about money, that's talking about finances, them other kids gonna follow. That's just how it goes. But we just got to be the ones that like put our foot on the ground and give back, and that's where it starts.
hmm And that's why I was also mentioning it really starts, with the youth and with the kids. And, unfortunately, there are going to be people out here in our community that's just going to be a lost cause.
Yeah,
Like you said, they don't want the
you
change.
can't help
They're
everybody.
too, yeah, you can't
Mm-hmm.
help everybody. They're too comfortable. And, like I say, getting to those kids and speaking life into them and letting them know that what's being modeled to them, because the reality is a lot of parents, like it all ties back into the home. Parents
Yeah.
are models for their children, and
Mm-hmm.
their children are going to adapt to what their parents are doing and thinking like, hey, my parents do
Mm-hmm.
this, I trust them, and I love them, and this is normal. It's normal for them, it's going to be normal for me. So,
Right.
really speaking life into them and like, hey, you don't have to be just an NBA player or a football player or an entertainer.
Right.
You want to be a doctor? You can be a doctor. You want to be a lawyer?
Right.
You
Right.
can be a lawyer. You want to work in Congress? You can do that. You want to be a VP? You can do that.
Yeah. For sure. But then they got to have people that come there that look like them
Hmm.
that where they feel that it's attainable. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
this is, my story. This is how I got here or what
Hmm.
have you. But somebody said it's hard to break what's familiar. That is very true. It is hard to break what's familiar, but I will say out of those group of people, there's always somebody that have the desire, the want, the all the above to change, but there's nobody coming around. There's nothing else that's showing them different, and they get sucked into that little space. Like I know dudes, man, were very smart, very smart. They could have done anything. They could have went anywhere. Like they were like AG honor students. And then because of their environment, they got caught up in situations where they went to jail. And I was just like, dude, how could this guy go to jail? It's because nobody went over there and pulled him out of that. You know what I'm saying? They just let him sit and in that environment, and then it got a hold of them. So I want us to do what we need to do in our environment here to do things for these kids that look like us, so we can change the narrative. But we can't just keep expecting these billionaire black people to do it because they're
Hmm.
obviously not posting it enough for people to be like, oh well, Jay Z did X, Y, and Z, so I think I'm gonna do this. And nothing against anybody, but you know, we gotta have some type of raw examples.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's attainable. That's why they always say stuff like why Steph Curry is like the face of the league because he's only 6'3". He's like an average build. He's an average body, but he's able to do so much with that average body that people can relate to.
Hmm.
It's like, oh well, because he a little taller than me, not far. I can probably attain that goal too.
Hmm.
But we should do this in our little communities every day,
Yeah.
well, at least once a week.
I agree with you. And sometimes, and I'm just thinking about my own personal journey, not having enough mentors when I was younger. When I went to college, I sought out mentors and people
Mm-hmm.
to help me way. But even with that, you don't know what you don't know. And somebody
Mm-hmm.
said, what did they say? You only are
Without the knowledge,
comfortable. Yeah. And then someone else said it's hard to break what's familiar.
right?
So I'm in school. I'm like, okay, I want to do this because I'm passionate about something without thinking about what can help me materially. And
Mm-hmm.
that's my mindset now. And I'm like, oh, if I would have known this years ago, I would have been on a different track or I would have advanced a lot, further along.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have like my cousins and my siblings and people coming behind me, I try to give them knowledge that I didn't have along the way to help accelerate their
Mm-hmm.
path. Because at the end of the day, no matter who you are, you're only as good as the people that come after you, like the seeds that you plant. Because you can never
Right.
fail. If you've planted a lot of seeds, even if you're not a millionaire, if you got a whole lot of millionaires that you've planted, then you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset to have. And another thing that I mentioned early on was, how many people that look like us are sitting on boards and in Fortune 500 companies. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a type of board. It could be a nonprofit board
Yeah.
that are helping underserved
Mm-hmm.
communities. So how can you get that information out to other people about, hey, there's an opportunity to be an associate board member here, even though they might not be an executive, they may have an opportunity to
For sure.
see
Mm-hmm.
how it's working.
Right.
So I think there's so many, Mike, to your point, there's so many things on a smaller level we can do to help like gradually advance people,
For
because
sure.
it's important to acknowledge that we might think of it as small, but one experience starts to spark curiosity among a
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I might have, when I was younger, read a magazine about the UN. I'm like, oh, I'm interested in international relations now. And it just
Right.
sparks and it keeps building throughout
Mm-hmm.
life. So what we think is small could turn out to be a big thing
For
for an
sure.
individual.
For
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
See
And
these.
I want to point out what this guy here
Yeah.
said. So without the knowledge, people can't gain access to those doors to be open. And, I feel like Mike, you and I, we see it on a daily basis,
Absolutely.
just how, man, the lack of knowledge and
Yeah.
just, again, pouring into these kids and sparking up that curiosity, just like you mentioned. sparking up that curiosity and asking those questions. I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you, from my own experience, I'm a first generation American. Both of my parents immigrated to this country. And I didn't know a lot of things because my
Mm-hmm.
parents didn't know it. Neither one of my parents graduated from high school. My mom has an eighth grade education. My father has an 11th grade education, and that's it. You
Yeah.
know, Cultural difference, language barriers, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so grateful, for their work ethic and their curiosity coming to the United States and asking questions. And so now when I encounter other people, I tell them, ask questions,
Yeah.
be
For
curious,
sure. Yeah.
you know. And so speaking that life into the encounters you have with the people, to
Mm-hmm.
be curious and ask those questions.
Yeah. So a lot of these underserved communities don't know the questions to ask. They don't even know that those questions are like a possibility. And like I said, like I've engaged and I've served, I've done things at the Boys and Girls Club here in Raleigh, and some of the stuff that I've seen is just is mind blowing. Like some of the like their approach, the way they see stuff is just like. But then you'll have some in there you can tell they're smart. You can tell, but like their environment is like all these other kids, parent situations that speak, talk, do, stuff like this. They don't really have an outlet to express like their God given ability in terms of knowledge. So I feel like we gotta do more about being on the ground and supporting these communities because we can find some of these kids that, what I'm saying, that maybe aren't athletic, but they're smart. They have goals, they have dreams, they just don't have any resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest thing is the resources because some of these kids can really like start a lot of these paths and plans prior to like getting out and getting on their own when they like, okay, they're smart enough to go to college now. They could have been so far ahead of the game if somebody just went in their community and had conversations with them. You know what I mean? Because then they could have been on the path to like helping other little kids that are like them. You know what I'm saying? But we talk about it, but we ain't doing a lot.
Yeah.
So that's just real. For real. Somebody else said somebody said, oh my God, somebody said the generation got soft with the cancel culture. Teaching our kids about the LGBTQ. This is why the Bronx is on fire right now with the youth running wild because of hit your kid, you can go to jail. He said, I'm an 80s baby. I mean, yeah, dang, that's a whole other conversation right there. But I mean, he telling the truth though, for real. Like crazy. Like I had to be home before the lights went on. Oh yeah, I mean, me too. I think we
Yeah.
all had that. I don't care what race you are. I think you had that, life experience. But again, I appreciate the conversation. I just want us to commit to something. Commit to the youth. Commit to the youth on a smaller scale. Those people need support just as a black person with a master's. You know what I mean? Let's
Let-
just focus on.
What
Hmm?
grade level do you think is a good starting point to share certain resources with? So maybe high school students in college, like what grade?
Hmm. So I'd say middle school,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, because I think middle school you start to like formulate the direction you're gonna take.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're still kind of like getting to your puberty. You're starting to think for yourself a little more. Your parents are giving you a little more leeway, and then you can kind of go left to right. And so with the wrong guidance, you can go into high school going crazy, or you can go into high school with some sense, and that's how you
Right.
start to formulate or whatever. I think middle school is probably ideal. When I was in school, in middle school, they had a financial literacy class in Washington, North Carolina. From what I understand, they don't have stuff like that anymore. They used to teach us how to write checks. They used to teach us all that stuff in middle school. I think it was like the seventh grade, but they don't do stuff like that no more. They don't even teach kids how to write in cursive no more. I see grown people
Mm-hmm.
now that's like 21 signing their name in print. Like it's a different time that we're in. But somebody said fifth grade and somebody said eighth grade. Well, I mean, middle school is kind of like right there in the middle.
Yeah.
Sixth grade is probably like a good time. You like 12, by the 11, 12, about to go into being a teenager. That's when you kind of start feeling yourself a little bit.
I agree
Mm,
with the middle school because I feel like high school goes by so
yeah.
fast. And it's like as soon as you enter high school, they already start dumping this responsibility on you. You in ninth grade. All right, have you started thinking about what colleges you want to go to, or what do you want to do as a profession? You know, they start dumping it all on you. So yeah, I think middle school for sure.
Yeah, because you're still trying to figure out you. And then by the time you hit the 8th, 9th grade, you kind of already got a good grasp of who you want to be to some degree. You start feeling yourself. Trust me, I got a 20-year-old, but I also have a 12-year-old that's about to be 13. So I understand the difference in how they receive information now. You know, especially when she was going into high school, and now that he's in middle school, it's like, okay, yeah, I need to get on him now. Yeah, this is the time because he can go left quick. And that's just being real. You know what I'm saying? You want to get to it quick. But
genes are strong.
Man, come on now. Come on now. But yeah, we should definitely have more of these conversations for real. We'll kind of have another one for sure in the future that we can break down more, you know, statistics or kind of like ideology behind why. And also, the next time we have this conversation, I hope that y'all can tell me that y'all committed to something in the community for the next generation. I got quiet on that one.
No, I mean, I have a friend of mine that has a program coming out, and they're working on some stuff. So I'm definitely looking to get involved with that to be able to speak to the youth about some things. So.
Yeah, we can even do like back to school drives. We could do like when I was at Elevation, I took it upon myself to take Gatorades out there to the kids one hot summer day. And like somebody was like, why don't you just do water? It's cheaper. I said, bro, they can go to the water fountain. It's not going to be as impactful getting them water as it would be getting them Gatorade. They're going to appreciate it more. And like the look on their kids' face, the kids' faces, it was just like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with these kids. You know what I'm saying? And we don't have enough people that look like us that are doing that. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to encourage y'all to do that more. You feel me?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate that. What are you going to say?
I said, I think this was a productive conversation. And we do need to talk about it more often. You know, definitely would love to share whatever ideas I have with you guys offline and share with you that would be helpful for me.
For sure. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate y'all. Until next time, we're going to be back on the ones and twos of Mike Ladd from Mind's Eye, Balan, Trish. Oh, he said me and my coworkers link up with the local school and do a clean the community project, and the kids love it. Hey, man, Young Dice, we appreciate that. Even though you're a Kendrick Lamar friend, we appreciate you, you know, doing what you're doing for your community and the kids, my brother. Salute to you. Oh, damn. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all. Oh, there you go. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all next time. I'll let y'all give y'all some links or give you some links. Now, Blana got up out of there. And we can further this conversation. But I'm going to let you know about what I got going with the kids. They can lock in with it.
Sounds
good.
All
right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Well, that concludes another episode with The Mind's Eye with Mike Lowry. Guys, thanks for your support. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. There's more content coming soon. Peace.